Hello and welcome to another episode of Historic Hindsight. I'm John, that's Tom, and today we're going to talk to you about nuclear warheads.
That's right, Johnny. Nuclear warheads, or actually a nuclear Boy Scout, and the story is absolutely ridiculous. So I thought I would don my absolutely ridiculous costumes here and drink some absinthe while we talk about a Boy Scout, Eagle Scout specifically, who thought it was a good idea to try to make a nuclear reactor in his mom's shed.
Nuclear reactor, not a nuclear warhead.
No, not a nuclear warhead. Although, spoiler alert, police may think it was a nuclear warhead, but we'll get there.
So why was this a badge that he was going after? Did the Boy Scouts have a make a nuclear reactor merit badge that you can?
So yes. Get? Yes and no. So he was trying to. He already got a merit badge for atomic energy of all things. And this was after he did all that he decided to make this. But let's
when was this?
Yeah, we'll jump into it. 1990s is when he was
90s.
When he was making this. But
I was expecting this to be like a 50s or 60s or something for some reason.
Well, almost. Let's get into the story. So his name is David Hahn. He was born in Royal Oak, Michigan, a suburb of Detroit, on October 30th, 1976.
Okay.
And the story, Johnny, it's going to start off like most modern Americans with his parents and, having a divorce, and then that leading him to split time between both parents and suffer from all the issues that entails.
Yeah, naturally.
And much like the product of a divorce, Johnny, with his parents moving on with their new families, they have to have something to occupy little David with something to do so that he's, not bothering them while they're trying to go off and make their new families, so to speak.
Right, yeah. Well, so they gotta keep him busy. So they enroll him in some clubs, I imagine.
He does get enrolled in Boy Scouts, and his father's dad, his paternal grandfather, thought it was a good idea to give little David the Golden Book of Chemistry Experiments, which. As a preteen, this is what he was given this book, Johnny, and we probably need to do an episode on this book itself because it was published in 1960 and is a detailed list of experiments that include the use of hydrochloric acid and like magnesium.
Yeah, they used to put together some pretty wild chemistry kits for children to use with stuff that like I had to get permission when I was working in a lab from my superiors to order some of the chemicals that they just ship along with these little chemistry sets in the 60s. But we did learn a lot.
Yeah.
Dangerous some of these things were. So that's good.
Well, and little David, he became obsessed with chemistry, Johnny, and used any bit of money that he had from birthdays or whatever else like that to buy chemistry equipment and not to be confused with like the chemistry sets that you get now where there's like food coloring and the baking soda volcanoes.
Titration.
No, this is like hydrochloric acid, and he's buying like legit beakers.
It's like, hey, make your own mustard gas.
Things like make your own mustard gas. That's exactly it. Things like today, if we saw that stuff in a house today, we'd be like, oh, that's a mobile meth lab. That's the kind of stuff that he's buying.
They're making meth or bombs.
Yeah, he's buying Bunsen burners. He's got legit, beakers, vials, all that stuff that you would need for a legit, like, college-level lab. His father is just happy that he's out of his hair and just kind of let him do what he wanted and set this lab up in his bedroom. Now, David is a very talented man when it comes to science. Not great in the rest of his subjects in school, but science he really excels in. And by the age of 13, Johnny, he is reading college-level textbooks or chemistry textbooks and understanding them and, like, doing experiments that are in college-level textbooks.
I read a bunch of college-level textbooks when I was getting my major in chemistry, and I didn't understand them.
But you didn't understand them. So like this is a 13-year-old kid who's understanding them.
Yeah, good on him.
So he's a little bit of a science genius. In any case, he didn't do so well in the safety department of that
I'm
whole
guessing there
science
wasn't
experiment.
a whole lot of safety information in the front of that 60s recipe book that he got his start from. So, not number one priority.
No, not number one priority. By the age of 14, Johnny, he actually was making nitroglycerin in his bedroom. So, very volatile, explosive.
I remember this was in the 90s, right? I remember hearing about like there being a thing or something where a bunch of kids were making nitroglycerin and like because what is it like styrofoam and or doing like the styrofoam?
No, that's napalm, Johnny. You're thinking of napalm.
Napalm.
Yeah, where you mix styrofoam with gasoline. No, nitroglycerin is like.
What's that one?
It's extracted out of like lye soap, I think. There's a type of soap that you can extract. Yeah, and it's very like if you shake it too hard, it goes boom. We had a TNT. Our Chinese the railroad the Chinese were using it to dig the tunnels and had a couple of whoopsies.
Okay, so he was making the more dangerous one that.
At 14, he's going to show up to a summer Boy Scout camp one year, orange. His whole skin is orange because he was injecting himself with various chemicals to test artificial tanning. So Donald Trump probably would really appreciate
injecting himself with like iron or
I don't I think it might have been iron the sulfide or whatever. Yeah, turning himself orange. So he has no quarrels about human experiments on himself, so at least he's doing it on himself and not somebody else.
At least it's on himself. Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, this is kind of like the Saved by the Bell where Zach makes that pimple cream, but then it ends up turning everybody red or whatever.
Yes,
so
He's
a young Zach Morris.
He's a young Zach Morris. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. That same summer, he's going to blow a hole in his tent when he was trying to make homemade fireworks with magnesium. So basically, this kid went to, because I was in Boy Scouts for a very brief time, and in your like in the summer camp, there was a store that you could go buy various things. Yeah, right. And one of those things you could buy was fire starters, where you strike a metal blade on it, which is basically just a bar of magnesium. So this kid, a little
bit of flint, a little magnesium, and then a little steel bit or something. Whatever.
So this kid took that and like shaved off a big pile of it, and then blew a hole in his tent because he was trying to make a firework out of it.
He sounds like he did then.
Well, yeah, he did.
It was just the details of getting it to explode where he wanted it to and when that he hadn't quite worked out. Yeah. Which important but minor details.
Yeah, important but minor details. In any case. Now, instead of his parents encouraging safety or getting him into like a chemistry group where he could learn proper handling of some of these chemicals and safety, they just like, hey, his dad goes, listen, I'm really sick of all the holes in the walls of this house, the burn marks in the carpet, and the spilled chemicals everywhere. You got to move this down to the basement. So
there it is. Okay, yeah. Get it into a more enclosed environment where there's even less ventilation. For your chemistry experiments.
Which is like now he's got the whole basement to work with, so he's got the whole little lab set up down in his basement.
Jesus. All right.
And this is where things go horribly, horribly wrong before they go horribly, horribly wrong. So David gets the idea to use a bunch of red phosphorus, and red phosphorus is that red stuff that's on the tip of matches that make it go. So he was.
Why?
I think he was trying to make fireworks again. Maybe I'm not entirely sure. It didn't really say why he got the red phosphorus, but he got a bunch of this red phosphorus. He was trying to grind it up in a glass bowl or glass beaker with a screwdriver of all things. I don't know. I'm assuming he was using the handle of the screwdriver to try to grind it up.
Probably, like a mortar pestle type.
But
deal.
If you know anything about red phosphorus, it tends to.
You don't want to impact it.
Yeah, it tends to go boom. And while he's doing that. It goes boom, sending glass shards into his eyes, causing burns on his face, and causing a little bit of an emergency trip here. And of course, it's the 90s, so DCS doesn't really exist, so it's not like the government stepping in going, hey, Maybe. Child Protective Services gives you kids.
Oh, no, it was just some idiot kid, making some experiments in the basement, having a little accident. What's the big whoop?
Yeah, he had a little accident, and after this exploded and sending glass shards into his eyes, his parents did the proper thing, and by proper thing I mean his dad said no more in the basement.
Bought him safety glasses.
And so then he moved his whole science lab to his mom's house into her shed. So,
which solve the problem because it was no longer Dad's problem.
There's no longer Dad's problem.
So he was out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, he was. At the time, he was primarily living with. At the time, he was primarily living with his dad. So he moves his stuff over to his mom's house. With Mom and his mom's boyfriend were just like, "Hey, we're really impressed with this kid's work ethic. Like
I mean, that's pretty impressive. Yeah, just a smart kid doing science experiments and shit. Like, good on you. Go, get a scholarship or whatever."
Exactly. Well, he does go out and get several jobs in retail to fund his experiments, where his goal is to get a sample of all the elements from the periodic table, including all the radioactive ones. That isn't exactly the safest thing to have, but he wants an example of every every element on the periodic table. So.
Bill Gates has one, right?
I'm sure he does.
A living periodic table, and I think you can buy living periodic table. They're expensive as hell, though.
Well, he's saving up any little bit of money that he has to this hobby. He does eventually go for his Eagle Scout, which would mean that he would have to get multiple merit badges. Now, if you're not familiar with Scouts, it's like 20 or 30 some odd merit badges that you have to get to Eagle Scout. And some of those are like mandatory, like you have to know first aid, you have to do some kind of community merit badge, stuff like that. But there's a lot of them that you can choose your own. Like you can choose archery or riflery, which is what I chose. He chooses atomic energy, which at this point, like the kid's blown himself up at Scouts. Like this at Scouts, he's blown himself up. He's the only one in his troop's history that was like, I want the atomic energy merit badge. And nobody's like.
I bet it's a cool looking badge though.
It's like a little. I'll put a picture. Things. Yeah, I'll put a picture. Yeah, it is a cool looking merit. It is a cool looking merit badge.
But
again, it's like at what point did any adult go like maybe like good on him for loving science, but like safety? And why are we letting a kid who blew himself up mess with atomic energy?
This was the 90s. Nobody cared about safety yet.
Fair point. Now, to get his badge, he made a pamphlet and built a model nuclear reactor and argued about the safety, practicality, and importance of nuclear energy moving forward for the environment, which, none of those are wrong. I mean,
so just a model nuclear reactor?
Yeah, model. Non-working.
From just a kit that you can get that it looks like, and maybe it has
he made it out of like soda cans and straws and stuff to show like how a nuclear reactor would work. Most importantly here, though, in order to make that pamphlet,
the uranium.
Yeah, well, in order to make that pamphlet, he befriends his local hospital staff to learn about radiation and radioactive materials and how, like, radioactive isotopes work in the medical field and, in what would be in, nuclear reactors. He's also got his hands on a bunch of Boy Scout, manuals on radioactive materials and radioactive energy. And those, again, written in the 60s, are full of information that you probably shouldn't be just letting the general 16-year-old kid read.
Well, read, sure.
Fine, but like
practice. Don't not let them follow the. Maybe have them read it and then explain to them the advancements and things we've learned since that was written.
This all reminds me of like Walt Disney had a German, ex-Nazi scientist that like Our Friend the Atom. This was like a show that and he's like, this is uranium and it is our friend and it will make energy. He's holding and he goes, and it's radioactive when you hold a Geiger counter to it. It's like as he's just like holding it in his bare hands.
And then he died of cancer.
Which
3 hours later.
Yeah, he would deserve because he was a Nazi.
Ex-Nazi, Tommy. That's what I heard.
Yeah, because Walt never supported Nazism.
This is not that episode, Tommy.
Future episode. I know it's not that episode, but whatever. Anytime I can get a dig in, I'm going to get a dig in it. Now, so he does get his merit badge. He does become an Eagle Scout, but he's not satisfied with his model reactor. He wants to actually create a working model nuclear reactor, and his goal here is to create a breeder reactor. Now, I'm not a scientist. I'm not really smart with that kind of stuff, and so I'm going to very, very dumb it down. A breeder reactor is a nuclear reactor that creates more fission material than it actually consumes. So this is, once you make that core start, splitting its atoms, it will continue to do it on its own indefinitely, creating the heat needed to boil the water to make the steam turbine spin, which is what you get your energy on. There are in fact, breeder reactors that were made, nuclear reactors. The vast majority of them that are made are not breeder reactors because those have a tendency to melt down, which is why, like, there's only 1 or 2 or 3 that are still in existence in the world, and none of them are in the United States. Because
it seems like that's like the pursuit for the endless energy machine.
It's super dangerous, and even if you are able
to, you got to be producing so much heat. Probably something has to be happening to.
And even if you're
keep making material,
and even if you're able to get it sort of stable, the cost benefit from it is usually too. That's why all the ones in the United States shut down, because it was just too cost prohibitive to keep it running as to what you're getting out of it. There's the science thing where you like there's no true like energy has to come from somewhere. Nothing's unlimited.
You can't have something that is just self-fulfilling.
But he's going for the tip top notch. The one that we don't. Even by the 90s, breeder reactors were shut down. So this is like a kid who's like, well, I can figure it out where the
everybody wants to make a small version of it. So to power. What scale of power would he be able to? Run his. I
guess it would all depend on his core and then what generator he has that set up to. Because again, look, nuclear reactors very briefly.
Cells he can get.
Yeah, nuclear reactors very briefly are basically just a gigantic steam engine generator. I mean, it's like it creates the heat that creates the steam that turns the turbines, just like you would a coal fire engine, coal-fired power plant, or wood fire steam engine from the Civil War. It's nuclear fusion that's creating the heat as opposed to fission, whatever. Yeah, I'm a scientist. I know what I'm talking about. Look at my hat. In any case, in order to build this, though, he does have to come up with multiple different types of radioactive material, and surely a teenager would be unable to obtain this. So this is all
90s, definitely.
This is all just theoretical, right? Except that in those Boy Scout handbooks I talked about earlier, it informed him what radioactive materials he needed and where he could get those materials from common day things like smoke detectors and old lamps, like old camping lamps and watches. So you remember back in the day with your watches when they had I want a watch that I could look at night because it glows? Yeah, that was radium. They just painted on radioactive materials that glowed.
But I mean, come on. How to extract enough material from any of that stuff would have to be just a monumental task.
Well, Johnny, where there's a will, there's a way, because what he's going to do is he's going to pretend to be a college professor and say that he's running several experiments, and nobody's going to question this. Nobody's going to be like, what college do you work for? Can I see some credentials? Nobody's questioning any of this, and he does this multiple times. His first...
To who?
So his first thing is he calls a smoke detector company. In order to get americium out of the, which is a radioactive material out of the smoke detectors, he calls the manufacturer, says that he's a college professor running an experiment and trying to get the americium out of those smoke detectors. So this company agrees to send him 100 broken smoke detectors, basically at cost, and then they tell him exactly how to get the americium out of the smoke detector.
Well, that's
and then
nice
mail him 100 smoke detectors where he extracts the americium.
Did they ask what type of experiment he was doing?
No questions. Johnny, these are people who didn't even ask
an experiment, sure,
what college he works for. Like, can we see some credentials?
Jeez.
Or the fact that he's a 16-year-old kid who sounds like a 16-year-old kid.
Or the fact that they're mailing all of these to a home address and not a college address.
Mm-hmm.
I'll send it, but I'm going to send it to your work address. I'm not sending it to some house.
Yep. And then he's going to take all that material, weld it together with a blowtorch, and then he's going to put it out in a hollow lead pipe and cut a very small hole in it, and this is going to act as his neutron gun to create the reaction he needs to kickstart his core. Now, to get to the core, get the core to work, he's going to scour antique stores and junkyards for old watches where he scraps the paint off of them. I mean, we're talking hundreds and thousands of watches, just scraping the paint off of them. And by the way, if you're at home thinking that this paint can't be that dangerous, They stopped using it because the people who were literally painting it on by hand were dying of cancer by the 90s. That's why they didn't use them in the 90s. That's why you had to go to junkyards and antique stores to get this shit.
So I mean, this is like a modern day Mad Hatter situation where the people making the hats.
Yeah, because they used to use mercury in the hats. To strip the beaver fur. Yeah. He also is going to obtain lithium from old camping lanterns. So the old camping lanterns, that little cloth that would actually burn and glow. That was lithium. He's going to get tritium from bow sights. So that what makes the bow sights glow, which we still use that today. In some regards, we use some tritium. We got some better stuff now that's not radioactive.
A lot of fiber optic stuff now.
There's still some tritium sites floating around. He's going to call a Czechoslovakian supplier to get uranium, Johnny, and merely all he says is, yeah, I'm a college professor running an experiment. And they're like, all right, ship it to your house. Uranium! Just a block of uranium.
Is this still,
I would hope not, but...
Did this maybe create a law that made it not...
Johnny, your faith in humanity is a little bit high there, because what you're going to hear later on this is you're going to get... it's going to destroy your faith in humanity even more as we continue the story.
Great.
And most importantly, though, he's going to get his main source of lithium from 1,000 batteries that he extracted, or he saved up money for, bought, and then extracted by use of a Bunsen burner to get all the lithium he needed out of them.
I'm sorry, batteries are expensive.
Batteries are
expensive. This dude's dropping
thousands of dollars on this. Yes. So he does make his rudimentary core out of radium and americium, wrapping it in layers of aluminum foil. So the lithium and the tritium, he's coming up with all kinds of different ways, because his first neutron gun wasn't giving the results that he wanted, so he tries all these different elements to try to get the results that he's wanting. So his core is basically made up of radium and americium, which he puts in layers of aluminum foil, wraps it in a ball, colors it in duct tape, so there goes the whole safety. At least his neutron gun was encased in lead, so it was at least directed radiation at that little hole, as opposed to duct taped wrap aluminum foil, which
what's a little radiation never hurt anybody, Tommy.
No containment field here. He sets his neutron gun up, points it at the core, and lo and behold, Johnny, he gets a reaction that is creating radiation. That is now doing the fission that it's needing to do. Now, it's not a true reactor here, because it's not actually connected to anything to generate anything, but he does have a reaction going on in the very briefest.
So now you got to drop it in some water, right? Get some turbines and stuff. What's the next step?
But when he gets his Geiger counter out, he realizes that the radiation levels are like 1,000 times above the normal ambient radiation.
I mean, sure.
And then when he discovers that it's getting worse, he's like, oh shit, I forgot the most important thing about nuclear power plants. They all have control rods to, slow this reaction down and control it. So he tries.
That's what the big pools do that too.
The water keeps it cool. Yeah. So he tries to create control rods out of drill bits, which doesn't really work. And when he registers radiation levels,
he just thought if it looked like a rod, maybe it would do.
Maybe it would work. And when he goes 5 houses down and is still picking up high levels of radiation, he goes, I might have screwed up a little bit, and it might be time to dismantle this.
Yeah,
and maybe separate some of this high radioactive materials out, because
I'm giving my neighborhood cancer.
Yes. So he does do the reasonable thing.
I'm sorry, you said this was Michigan. This isn't Flint, Michigan, is it?
No, it's not Flint, Michigan. No.
Okay. Good. Yeah, they got enough shit.
Small suburb of Detroit is where he's at. So he does a reasonable thing. He does attempt to dismantle the core and spread out the radioactive material. He puts some of the radioactive material in a shoebox, which he puts in his mom's house because safe. Other parts he just leaves in the shed. He's like, it's probably fine here. But he loads up the bulk of the material into his car on the night of August 31st, 1994. Nosy neighbors see him messing around in his car late at night, thinking that he's stealing tires. They're going to go ahead and call the police, and the police are going to show up, pull him over, and they're not going to buy a story of like, well, I'm waiting for a friend. And it's not really clear what he was intending to do with it. Like, I don't know if he was just going to go dump it in the river or what.
Well,
but
but why do they think he was stealing tires? Like,
I don't know. His nosy neighbors.
There's a lot of tire thefts going on in the area.
The police pull him over. They don't buy a story about him waiting for a friend, and they search his vehicle. At which point, David says, careful. Totally radioactive stuff in that trunk. At which point, the police do the reasonable thing, and it's the Cold War, and so they think that he made a nuclear bomb.
Or was at least trying to, or had the materials for
it. Yeah, they legit think this is a nuclear bomb. So they tow.
They thought that.
So they do the other reasonable thing, where they tow the car to the police station, where the bomb squad comes out. Not the bomb squad coming out to where the car is.
That's the wrong way.
Yeah, they tow the car to the police station.
Might be a nuclear bomb. I'm going to rattle it and shake it up and take it to the police station with this tow truck.
Exactly.
On the probably very well-maintained Detroit roads.
Yes. And so the police determined, the bomb squad goes, well, that's not a nuclear bomb, but it sure shit has a hell of a lot of radiation coming out of it, and that's a problem.
Not a nuclear bomb, but also not a problem.
Yeah, not a problem. So they contact the Federal Radiological Emergency Response Team with the FBI and the Nuclear Regulatory Commissions, who all come out to investigate. Now, David keeps his mouth shut about his lab and his mom's shed. He goes, I'm probably in enough trouble the way it is, so I'm going to just keep my mouth shut.
Yeah, good boy. You might as well, at this point, just shut your damn mouth and wait for your lawyer.
Well, and then the Federal Radiological Emergency Response Team goes, well, we only exist to regulate nuclear power plants. He is not operating a registered nuclear power plant.
He's like, I'm trying to, though.
So we don't have any jurisdiction.
Any tips?
Yeah, so they're like, we don't have any jurisdiction here. So they just kind of release him. And it takes them 2 months to follow up.
No, so they did a not my problem?
They did a not my problem bounce. It takes them 2 months before the feds are going to finally look into his lab in the shed. And they're like, oh, you had a lab in his shed. In this interim, the mom's like, I'm concerned about the radiation. So she takes, unbeknownst to the feds, takes garbage bags full of materials out of the shed and just throws them in the trash, like the regular trash. So now you have an unknown amount of radioactive materials.
Yeah, go into your local waste
dump, which is now there, and they can't really do a lot about that. 5 months.
They don't want you putting cell phones in
the trash can.
Old gaming systems and anything with a battery into regular trash. I imagine they have a big issue with
radioactive
a bunch of radioactive material just going straight into
the dump. It's going to take the EPA 5 months, Johnny, after his initial arrest to and which, by the way, I looked and I looked and I looked. I don't know if he actually was punished. He was a minor, so probably
got off.
Boys
will be boys. I mean, it was the 90s too. Boys will be boys, right?
Boys. Yeah,
was he
give him a scholarship, right? Huh?
Is he a white kid?
Yeah, he's a white kid.
All right, so we got off. Boys will be boys. Slap on the wrist. Probably got a scholarship somewhere.
Now, the EPA is going to investigate 5 months later. They're going to go to the scene, to the shed or what's remaining of the sheds. They're going to claim that his experiments have posed a significant risk to the health and safety of surrounding citizens
around,
because we're at well over 1,000 times the normal.
Yeah, because it's pretty obvious that, he screwed the pooch on this one.
So they're going to request money from the federal government for cleanup, which the government does grant. It is estimated that he exposed 40,000 people to dangerous levels of radiation. Like I said,
for what period of time was was it a long exposure time, or was this
several? Well, I mean, the radioactive material was there for 5 months after he was arrested. It doesn't really say how long he was working on this, but I'm assuming a significant enough time to do the experiments that he was. I would say probably 6 months. He was probably working on this before he got picked up. That's me estimating. I don't know if that's exactly how long he was
but for a substantial amount of time, people were unknowingly being submitted to obscene levels of radiation around him.
In June 1995, Johnny, the EPA finally gets out there to dismantle the shed, and they dismantle the shed, and they put everything in the shed, including the shed, in 50-gallon drums, and then bury that shit in the Great Salt Lake Desert next to other government radioactive waste materials where they're like, that's where it is today. It's like, well,
that's the only place we have to put it. It was, big old underground salt mines. Yeah, we'll take that. That seems pretty good. We'll just put everything there.
And Johnny, this isn't
when it fills up.
This isn't a battle. Aftermath report.
Oh, this is a battle?
No, it's not a battle, but we have an aftermath report here, and this is where this ridiculous story gets a little bit dark. So it's still, even to this day, too early to tell if the population is getting higher levels of cancer. Although cancer is not an uncommon thing in this community. David Hahn himself is going to refuse to be studied when he's in his 20s, saying he'd rather not know of what level of damage he did to himself. He's like, I'd rather not know, so please don't take my blood.
All right, so he answered that age-old question of, if you wanted to, if somebody could tell you when you're going to die, do you want to know, or would you rather not know?
And he said
he'd rather not know. Because you're going to die soon, bud.
Well, spoiler. After the incident, David kind of loses his sense of self, and this was a combination of him being arrested, like all that stress that goes along with that, and everybody's telling him that he's an idiot because you're an idiot. His mother is actually going to commit suicide in 1996, which also sends him kind of down in a deepward spiral.
Oh, because I imagine folks weren't kind.
I would imagine probably not the most kind, no. He does graduate from high school. His father encourages him to attend college at the Macomb Community College, where he does study metallurgy, but he never really wants to go to class and kind of bums out there. He's then directed to go into the military, where he joins the Navy and serves on the USS Enterprise. And if you're unaware, Johnny, that's a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier.
I thought it was a spaceship.
Well, that too, but it's also a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, which he served on because nobody thought that was a bad idea.
And what's he gonna do?
I don't
make a nuclear reactor in there. Like, what? You're just doing word association equals bad, Tommy.
All right, fine.
He had an affinity for it, and it's not like he's gonna get sicker.
Fair enough. Maybe he was the one who had to go in and whatever the core is getting a little hot. Why don't you go in and push the rod in manually?
Go figure it out.
You want to talk about awful things going wrong on nuclear-powered boats? Watch, what was that? There was a fucking movie with Harrison Ford where there was a Russian nuclear sub that went horribly. Anyways, not important. He's going to eventually transfer to the Marines, where he is going to be honorably discharged, but he never really seems to get his life on track. On April 23rd, 2007, the FBI opened a formal investigation on him again, as a tip was called in that he had a second neutron source in his freezer, and he was working on building another reactor.
He was trying it again? Wait, he was going back to his old experiment and trying it again? He's like, I almost had it?
Yeah, so the FBI opened the investigation. They do determine that there was no threat, but they do interview him along with several other individual sources that say that David Hahn was suffering from multiple mental health diagnoses that were going untreated, where he wasn't taking his medication, but he was self-medicating with copious amounts of cocaine. So
that's good.
That was good.
I hear cocaine is a good thing to self-medicate on.
And so the FBI, when they were investigating him, he was talking about his book deal that he was in the process of making, and just rambling on about government conspiracies. So there's that.
Book deal? Was he? How's he doing on the book deal? Well, is he going to get a book? He's going to make a big book bestseller.
Well, Johnny, on August 1st, 2007, he's going to be arrested and charged with larceny in Clinton Township, Michigan, for attempted to steal smoke detectors. So I think we know what he was going to use those for.
Wait, all right. So if he attempted to steal them, you got to assume he called back up the smoke detector company again, and they're like, we're on to you this time. We're not going to fall for that twice.
Fool us once. Based on his mugshot, it's safe to assume that he was either on methamphetamines or he was burning himself with his experiments. Yeah. And I'll put his mugshot up because it is...
he's just toasted.
Rough.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like he's not had a good go at life since the arrest and the mother's suicide and everything else.
He is going to plead guilty to the attempted larceny, and it is recommended that he do time served. He is going to be sentenced to 90 days, but that sentence is going to be delayed to give him time to get mental health treatment. But unfortunately, whatever treatment he did have and whatever jail time he did serve did not act as a rehabilitation like you would hope.
Wait, what? Our jail system didn't rehabilitate him?
No, because unfortunately...
That is shocking.
On September 27th, 2016, at the ripe old age of 39, David is going to die in his hometown of Shelby Charter Township due to accidental overdose of alcohol and fentanyl.
Shit. Yeah, that'll do it.
That'll end the story of the Nuclear Boy Scout.
Hey, for those wondering, the movie that Tom mentioned earlier was K-19, the Widowmaker.
K-19, it is a really, actually, it is an entertaining movie.
I remember seeing the trailer for it.
Ton of people die.
Well, it's a submarine, so...
It's not a drowning, Johnny. Not of drowning.
Oh. I'll have to check it out. That's it for this week in Historic Hindsight. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review, and join us next week when we start to talk about how all the presidents are assholes, starting with Washington.